This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My husband has serious skin mysophobia. He doesn't let anyone get close. Half a year after marriage, I tried every means. Still can't kiss him at all. He warned me, if you're not honest, I'll throw you out. Finally, I was extremely angry. I defiled him in one go, afraid of his rage. I packed my luggage overnight and fled in a hurry. Later, he found me, trapped me on the sofa. His eyes begged, I'm honest now. Please kiss me. I worked overtime until late at night. I returned home exhausted. As soon as I nestled into the sofa, a cool and low greeting came from behind, "You're back." I closed my eyes satisfactorily, took a deep breath. The voice is really nice, like a clear spring. I looked back and saw Rocky with wet hair, wearing a bathrobe and walking into the dining room. He took out a can of soda from the refrigerator, drank it up in one gulp. He raised his head, showing his chiseled jawline, his Adam's apple rolled up and down, sexy and full of tension. After drinking, he turned around. The bathrobe on his chest was already loose, exposing his sexy collarbone. With the movement of his hand, his fair and shiny chest muscles loomed divine. I stared at him greedily and spoke boldly, "If you don't dress properly, I can't help but kiss you now." His pupils shook, instantly tightened his bathrobe, frowned tightly. "Your words are really getting bolder and bolder." I stared at him ambiguously, laughed wantonly. "How can I kiss you if I'm not bold?" After saying that, I sat up from the sofa, approached him step by step. His Adam's apple rolled uneasily. He took 2 steps back in succession, scolded in a low voice, "Don't come over." At this moment, it seemed that I was a wretched pervert. I stopped knowingly, stared at him blatantly. "Recite the 3 chapters of agreement you made before." He put the bottle on the dining table. His face was cold. At this moment, he stood under the incandescent lamp, surrounded by soft light, like a god. I swallowed, and answered, 1. Don't touch you. 2. The marriage contract is valid for 1 year. After the business cooperation between the 2 families is stable, we can get divorced. 3. Once there is a violation, the marriage contract will be terminated immediately. The loss will be fully borne by the breaching party. He nodded satisfactorily, tightened his bathrobe and turned to leave. "Don't violate the agreement." I stared at his ruthless back, sighed helplessly. Really boring. Such a divine can only be looked at but not eaten. Rather than torturing like this, it's really better to kill me. Rocky and I are in a family alliance marriage. In the eyes of outsiders, we are a perfect match. A talented man and a beautiful woman. But only I know how wronged I am. He has a cold temperament, has very serious skin mysophobia, doesn't let me get close. In the 2 months after marriage, I haven't even touched his hand. Although I really want to violate the agreement, I always restrain myself, keep being reserved. Later, perhaps because my eyes were too blatant, he proposed the 3 chapters of agreement to me. This nominal marriage makes me very frustrated. Heaven have mercy. I really want to eat him. If it weren't for the cooperation between the 2 families, I would really take him down directly without any scruples. Unfortunately, it's not the right time yet. He loves researching food, and every weekend he cooks. I sit at the dining table, bored and resting my head on my hand, staring at his busy figure in the kitchen. His loose gray loungewear can't hide his perfect physique. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, strong and sturdy. The bright yellow apron around his waist creates quite a contrast. "Rocky, I want to eat braised fish and sweet and sour ribs." He stops what he's doing, turns around and coldly rejects. There are no ingredients. I bite my lip awkwardly, gazing at him longingly. "If I can't have fish, I'll want to eat you." He furrows his brows, as if looking at a weirdo. "If you keep talking like that, don't blame me for throwing you out." He grits his teeth, suppressing his anger. I clasp my hands together, raising them to my chest, in a teasing tone. "Okay, come catch me." His face turns red. His fists clench and unclench. Then he sighs helplessly and unties his apron. "Wait, I'll go buy some." Watching him hurriedly leave, I can't help but smile wider. He's pretty cute. He prepared a feast, and I compliment him while eating. "Rocky, this dish is so delicious. I want to eat it for a lifetime." He uses chopsticks to put some fish into my bowl, coldly replying, "If it's good, eat more. And keep your mouth busy." My mouth is stuffed full, nodding repeatedly. As I lower my head to eat, I catch a glimpse of a barely perceptible smile at the corner of his mouth. Holy hell, he's really smiling. At the product launch, Rocky and I take the stage together for an interview. We sit side by side, very close. Unintentionally, my arm brushes against him. I instantly become alert, stealing a glance at his reaction. He's still calmly answering the host's questions. Seemingly unaware, I finally relax. Thank goodness he didn't notice. Otherwise, if he had dodged, I would have been so embarrassed. After the host finishes the product-related questions, the topic shifts to our relationship. He generously responds, "Our relationship is great." After saying this, he turns to look at me. The audience erupts in flirtatious cheers. I shyly nod, looking at him earnestly. "Yes, I really love Mr. Rocky." At this moment, his brows slightly raise, his ears turning quietly red. I smile knowingly. "See, I can still get to you." After the launch, Rocky's attitude towards me has softened quite a bit, and even his gaze holds some unclear emotions. At the banquet, he shields me from drinks, keeping me close by his side. Though there's no physical contact, I know he's trying. We don't return to the apartment complex until after midnight. He's a bit tipsy, but still clear-headed. I follow behind him, teasing, "Rocky, can you walk in a straight line?" He takes off his suit jacket, draping it over his shoulder, just wearing a white shirt. Then, he stretches out his arms, standing on the white line, responding in sync with me. Sure, watching the scene before me, my heart races uncontrollably. The desire inside me grows stronger, like a beast about to break free from its cage. I stop in my tracks and call out to his back, "Rocky, can I have a hug?" He suddenly halts and turns around. Fueled by hormones, I stride toward him, and then tightly embrace him. A faint woody scent surrounds my nose. Through the thin fabric, I can feel the heat of our skin touching, but just as I feel this for 2 seconds, I'm suddenly pushed away with great force. Losing my balance, I fall directly to the ground. Pain shoots from my butt, triggering my tear ducts. In the next moment, hot tears roll down my face, and he, at this moment, stands frozen, looking at me helplessly. "I told you not to get close to me." His tone is cold as ice. It feels like a bucket of cold water, dousing my passion. My vision blurs. I can't see his expression clearly, but I can sense his anger. Knowing I'm in the wrong, I lower my head in grievance. "I'm sorry. I won't dare do it again." He sighs heavily, steps in front of me, and asks, "Did you hurt yourself?" I wipe my tears, trying to stand up, but just moving slightly sends unbearable pain to my backside. I can't move. With tear-filled eyes, I look at him. "Rocky, I think my butt might be broken." That night, Rocky called an ambulance to take me to the hospital. I ended up hospitalized for 2 weeks. Reason, a sacral fracture. Perhaps out of guilt, he cooked delicious meals for me every day, taking care of me. When family and friends heard the news, they rushed over, worried and asking what happened. Of course, I couldn't tell them this silly story. I could only lie and say I slipped while drunk. But the blame fell on Rocky. His dad directly confronted him. "How can you be a husband? How could you let Haley fall?" He remained silent, swallowing his grievances. I didn't speak either. My fracture was my own fault, and him getting scolded was only natural. I wouldn't defend him. When I was discharged, Rocky personally arranged a very soft wheelchair for me. All the chairs at home were covered with soft cushions, to make it easier to take care of me. He even brought the housekeeper over. This arrangement warmed my heart, and I wanted to shout it to the world. My best friend scolded me for being a love-struck fool, saying I got overly emotional over a small gesture. But despite his cold demeanor, Rocky was truly beautiful. I didn't mind. Recently, Rocky seemed busy with a project, coming home late and not returning for several days. I was nearly fully recovered, planning to find an excuse to see him soon. But to my surprise, he sent me a message that night. He shared a restaurant address, asking me to pick him up. I jumped off the bed. What a pleasant surprise. I quickly got ready and sped off to see him. Upon arrival, I got out of the car and looked around, but I couldn't find him. Just as I was about to call him, I heard a soft female voice nearby. "Boss Rocky, are you okay? Boss Rocky, let me take you to rest." I quickly turned around to see a woman carefully supporting Rocky's arm, guiding him towards me. Rocky was swaying, looking as if he were drunk, letting her assist him. A flame of anger shot up inside me. Wasn't he supposed to keep people away? What was he doing now? Fuming, I opened the car door, ready to leave. "Haley," he suddenly called out, his voice hoarse and trembling. My heart skipped a beat, and I paused, looking at him. He immediately pushed the woman away, stumbling toward me. "Oh no. Don't fall." In the next moment, a strong smell of alcohol hit me as he collapsed into my arms. I was startled, thankful for the door. Otherwise, my rear would have been hurt again. He hugged me tightly, his chin buried in my neck. Oh my, how much had he drunk? He was actually touching me. The woman followed, apologizing. I'm sorry, Miss Haley. Boss Rocky drank too much at the gathering. Sorry for bothering you. I nodded in response. That much was true. But why did it sound so awkward? Haley, I want to go home, he said, his voice hoarse, tinged with a hint of pleading. My heart softened instantly. I gently coaxed him and helped him into the back seat. On the way home, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, worried. Rocky, how are you? I feel awful, he gasped, tugging at his collar, revealing his enticing collarbone. Don't puke in the car, hang in there, we'll be home soon. I helped him back into the house. He was burning hot to the touch. After laying him on the bed, I rushed to the kitchen to pour a glass of warm water. But when I returned, I found him sitting on the floor, his shirt already removed. I froze, my blood boiling. He was slightly squinting, his lips slightly parted, his skin flushed red. Could I really be seeing this? He seemed to notice my presence, opening his eyes and calling my name repeatedly, trembling. My heart raced. A reckless thought crossed my mind. As I stepped closer, he suddenly pulled me forcefully. I stumbled into his arms, my palm resting on his firm, smooth abs. He was scalding hot. His eyes were turbulent. The look in them seemed to want to devour me. Help me. He bit his lip tightly, voice urgent. My gaze instinctively drifted downward, finally landing on something shocking. Wait, this wasn't just drunkenness. He had been drugged. Before I could react, his dry palm cradled my face. We were mere centimeters apart. I feel so bad, he said, his gaze more naked than ever. Before I knew it, he leaned in, and the heated, suggestive atmosphere didn't pull me under. Instead, it snapped me back to reality. I immediately covered his mouth, nervously swallowing. Rocky, if this goes on, you'll hate me when you wake up tomorrow. Though he was in a daze. After taking the medicine, he lacked strength, and I could push him away with all my might. He curled up on the floor, trembling uncontrollably. Hang in there, don't you dare die. I called the family doctor. Fortunately, there was nothing serious. I took care of him until late at night, finally able to rest. When I woke up the next day, it was already noon. The housekeeper knocked on my door, calling me to get up for a meal. I got ready and went out, only to see Rocky sitting at the dining table, slowly sipping honey water. Looking at his cool, restrained demeanor today, the image of him from last night, in a state of passion, flashed in my mind. Rocky, how are you going to thank me? I teased, leaning in closer. He paused for 2 seconds, then put down his bowl and stood up, ignoring my question. I'm done eating. What are you avoiding? I didn't assault you last night. I frowned and shouted at his back. He didn't stop, walking straight into the room and closing the door. At that moment, I felt a sense of helplessness, like a good person getting no reward. Rocky, what a rude guy. For the past 2 days, Rocky deliberately avoided me. In those 2 days, he only said one thing to me. We need to keep some distance. I couldn't understand him. He clearly knew I helped him, yet he treated me even more coldly than before. What a case of good intentions gone wrong. With nowhere to vent my frustration, in a fit of anger, I ran to the boxing gym. I printed out a photo of Rocky and taped it to the punching bag. I hit it repeatedly, venting my dissatisfaction with every punch, until my arms ached and I couldn't lift them anymore. Exhausted, I collapsed on the ground, and when I looked up, I saw Rocky's blurred figure approaching me. Suddenly, everything spun around me, and the next second, I blacked out. When I woke up again, I was lying in a hospital bed. Rocky was sitting beside me, repeatedly playing with my boxing gloves. So the scene before I fainted wasn't an illusion. Seeing me awake, he leaned over, getting a little closer. You're awake. I shut my eyes again, sulking and refusing to speak. A light laugh came from him, teasing, I can tell you really dislike me, to the point of fainting from low blood sugar after hitting me. He continued talking to himself. I owe you a thank you for that night. That night was my mistake. Thank you for staying calm and helping me. My heart jolted and I opened my eyes to look at him. His gaze was clear and sincere, but without a hint of emotion. My heart sank. You can ask for anything as a reward, but I can't give you my feelings. I can't accept anyone having physical or emotional connections with me. So don't hurt yourself for me. It's not worth it. His words were direct and unambiguous. In that moment, my heart plummeted. He really was an impenetrable stone. I reached out to pull him closer, but he stood up and moved away. Why not give it a try? You clearly don't reject me. His expression returned to its usual coldness, coldly uttering 2 words, not interested. Then he turned and left. Rocky, I wasn't sure if it was my pride or anger, but I called out to him. Let's get a divorce once our cooperation project is over. He froze in place, and in that moment, the air seemed to solidify. I don't know how long it was before I heard him softly reply, okay. When the door clicked shut, my heart squeezed painfully, a sharp ache in my chest. I had tried my best, yet still couldn't win his heart. If that was the case, it was better to end this entanglement before I fell deeper. Rocky and I resumed our cooperative relationship. We both focused on work, deliberately avoiding opportunities to interact, even living under the same roof. We met no more than 3 times a week. That day was the launch of the new product for our company. This time, I wasn't invited to stand on stage with him. Standing next to him tonight was someone else. She was the woman I had seen the night Rocky was drunk, Serena. I quietly sat in a corner of the audience, watching the two of them chat on stage. A hint of bitterness welled up inside me. Rocky and she really looked good together. Serena was currently a very important partner for Rocky. Recently, they had been seen together often making headlines in business news. There were even rumors of our marriage being in trouble. Fortunately, both Rocky and my family managed to suppress them. As someone involved in this relationship, I knew well that Serena's feelings for Rocky were special, and it seemed Rocky was willing to accept her. If nothing changed, the position of president's wife at our company was about to change hands. After the launch event, it was pouring rain outside. Coincidentally, I hadn't driven today. I waited a long time for a taxi, but none came. The crowd was noisy. At that moment, I heard a worried voice to my left. "The rain is so heavy." I looked through the crowd and saw Serena standing on the steps, her hands rubbing together, gently frowning at the sky. Just then, a luxury car stopped in the rain. The back door opened, and Rocky emerged, holding an umbrella. For a moment, I felt our gazes collide, but unfortunately, he didn't come towards me. Instead, he walked straight to Serena, holding the umbrella for her as she got into the car. In that instant, my heart felt as cold as the downpour. With no peace to be found. Back home, it was already late at night. I opened the door to darkness. It seemed Rocky still hadn't returned. I sat despondently in front of my computer, typing up the divorce agreement all night. Of course, I cried all night too. This time was the last time I cried for Rocky. The next morning, I was awakened by the aroma of food. I blinked sleepily and checked the time. It was Saturday, the day when Rocky would consistently research culinary delights. But this time, I didn't join him at the table as usual. I quickly got ready to head out. Just as I was about to open the door, he called out to me, "Are you going out for something?" His rare gentle demeanor caught me off guard. I replied briefly and said nothing more. "Why not eat something before you go? I made a lot of dishes." I glanced at the table full of delicacies and coldly shook my head. "No, thanks." Then I opened the door and stepped out. I didn't go far, just sat in the community park for a long time, emptying my mind. The autumn wind whistled in my ears, but I felt no chill at all. It wasn't until my stomach and brain protested that I snapped back to reality. 2.5 hours had passed. Suddenly, I remembered the delicious dishes Rocky had made. I was so hungry. Just as I was about to get up and search for food, my legs gave way and I sat back down. I felt dizzy. It seemed my low blood sugar had returned. I quickly rummaged through my bag, trying to find a piece of candy to keep me going. Feeling dizzy again, a familiar voice came from above, causing me to jump and hesitate before looking up. Rocky stood calmly in front of me, holding a thermos. How strange. I could actually see worry in his eyes. He crouched down and opened the lunchbox. A delicious smell wafted over, stimulating my saliva. He placed the food beside me and said to himself, "These were originally meant to feed the kittens, but it's clear you need them more right now." With that, he handed me a pair of chopsticks. I was speechless. Since when do stray cats eat with chopsticks? What a puzzling guy. He clearly didn't like me, yet he still came over to show concern from time to time. Was this some kind of personality flaw? Anger flared up inside me, and I turned my head to refuse him. He didn't insist, just sighed. "All right then, if you don't want it, I'll have to throw it away." My instinctive reaction was quite alarming. I quickly turned my head back. The next moment, a bite of food was already fed into my mouth. I was taken aback by this sudden action. A warm sensation spread from my heart, turning into a flame that made my face feel hot. Rocky smiled, surprisingly gentle. He shoved the lunchbox into my arms, softly urging, "No matter how upset you are, you still need to eat." After saying that, he intended to stand up and leave. I held the lunchbox, tears uncontrollably falling down. I wiped my tears and called out to his back, "Don't be so nice to me from now on. Otherwise, I'll become more and more dependent on you." He turned around, revealing a warm smile. Until we're divorced, you're still my family. Caring for you is my duty. He stood under the tree, the breeze gently lifting the edges of his clothes, just like my heart at that moment, swaying unsteadily. Rocky always had countless ways to make one's heart flutter, even if I was just a duty to him. Today, the collaboration project between our two companies was confirmed. This meant that even without a marriage connection, we would continue to develop effective cooperation. However, it also indicated that the day I signed the divorce papers with Rocky was approaching. I didn't have the courage to send out the divorce agreement that I had hidden in my email. An inexplicable anxiety gripped my heart. I began to deliberately avoid meeting him. While he was on a business trip out of town, I moved back to my apartment, trying to adapt to single life early. I pulled a few friends to go shopping during the day and hit bars at night. Life was quite enjoyable, but unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. After a few days of reckless behavior, my body collapsed. I had a fever all day. My consciousness blurred from the heat. After taking 2 ibuprofen, I lost awareness and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, it was already late at night. The fever had subsided, and my body was drenched in sweat. Lying in bed, still dazed, I suddenly thought, if I just died like this, would Rocky miss me a little? As these thoughts crossed my mind, a wave of sorrow washed over me. Tears fell uncontrollably. They were right, I was a hopeless romantic. And I had fallen for someone who had no future. I groped my way into the bathroom, preparing to take a shower to clear my head. Just as I had filled the bathtub with water for a soak, I weakly propped myself up against the bathtub and slowly stood up, preparing to take a bath and change clothes. But just after taking 2 steps, my foot slipped. My body fell backward uncontrollably. In the next second, water splashed everywhere and I fell into the bathtub. Haley. In a hazy state, I actually heard Rocky's voice. My mind went blank. In the hazy steam, I seemed to see Rocky's figure, getting closer and closer, closer and closer. Finally, that face that only existed in my dreams appeared clearly in front of my eyes at this moment. I must really be dying. I'm even having hallucinations. I reached out and cupped his face. He didn't dodge. The cool and smooth touch made me happy. Sure enough, it's a dream. After all, in reality, Rocky wouldn't let me touch him. I stared obsessively at his somewhat blurry handsome face. My fingertips slid across his lips. So soft. Rocky, since it's a dream, then let me kiss you, okay? He still didn't resist. Sure enough, only you in my dream are so obedient. In the next second, I grabbed his collar, pulled him in front of me in one go, and kissed those soft thin lips. A tingling sensation spread all over my body, and my body involuntarily trembled. Desire instantly engulfed me. I was not satisfied with just this. Since it was such a dream after all, I naturally could do whatever I wanted. At this moment, Rocky seemed to have changed into a different person. He responded passionately to me. Dense kisses fell on my collarbone and continued downward, sinking with me in this gentle land of water. Even if I died like this, it wouldn't matter. Being a romantic ghost is also good. I didn't die. Instead, I woke up in bed. I frowned and looked out the window at the just dawning sky. Logically speaking, shouldn't I have been in the bathroom last night? Gradually, the fragments of memories in my mind flashed quickly in my brain, piecing together into complete pictures. I seemed to have dreamed of Rocky. In the dream, not only did I kiss him, but we also moved from the bathroom to the bedroom. At this time, the soreness coming from my body made me immediately vigilant. Wait, this doesn't seem like a dream. I instantly sat up in shock and looked around the room. It was much neater than usual. And the bed sheet. It's also different from what I slept on yesterday. A burning sensation came from my neck. I reached for a mirror and took a look. I screamed in fright. Shocking kiss marks were all over my body. Each glaring mark seemed to be replaying last night's scene for me. My heart beat wildly in unease. It's over. I seem to have really defiled Rocky. I quickly opened my phone and scrolled through my frenzied actions from last night when I was barely conscious. In my chat with Rocky, I had sent him over a dozen long messages expressing my helplessness about loving someone I couldn't have. Each message felt like something a mad concubine in a cold palace would say. Reading them made my heart race in fear. The last entry was a voice call that lasted an hour. My breath caught. I had no memory of that conversation at all. My heart pounded faster. It was over. Rocky was definitely going to hate me for this. I quickly got out of bed and saw a note on the coffee table in Rocky's handwriting. I have something to do. Wait for me to come back. Wait for him to come back. Wait for him to kill me? Before he found me, I hurriedly packed my bags and passport, rushing to the airport without looking back. I didn't even know where to go, just as long as it was far away from Rocky. I booked an afternoon flight to France. As soon as I entered the waiting area, I suddenly heard an announcement calling my name. "Miss Haley, please come to the front desk to collect your lost passport." My heart dropped. My passport? Sure enough, when I looked down, my bag was empty. I dashed to the lobby, and just as I reached the front desk to retrieve it, a probing voice came from behind me. "Where are you going?" I jumped, mechanically turning around to see Rocky glaring at me, his gaze fixed on the luggage in my hands. Next to him stood the beautiful woman who had helped him that night. I didn't know how to answer. His eyes darkened, emanating a hint of danger as he grabbed my wrist and pulled me aside. My heart raced, my mind going blank. He held my hand. "Haley, where do you think you're sneaking off to?" His tone held some emotion. I stammered, feeling guilty and wanting to break free from his grip. "I didn't mean to last night. I know that no matter how you explain, you'll just end up hating me more. But this is a society governed by law. Don't do anything crazy. Murdering your wife is illegal." After saying that, my lips trembled uncontrollably. His originally cold gaze softened, revealing a hint of a smile. "So you're feeling guilty and scared, which is why you're trying to escape?" I stared blankly at him, my words stuck in my throat, unable to speak or swallow. His hand slowly trailed down my arm, finally grasping my palm, his warmth radiating. I looked up in shock, meeting his passionate gaze. "Last night, I was willing." I mean, my body doesn't reject you. Only you." Just then, the bell in the lobby rang suddenly, sending ripples through my heart. He held my hand tightly, his warm palm creating a damp sensation, and I couldn't tell if it was his nervousness or my excitement. Rocky brought me in front of Serena, casually wrapping his arm around my shoulder as he introduced me. "This is my new project partner, Serena, here to see her off." He even took the initiative to explain. Her expression paused, her gaze shifting to our intertwined hands, and she smiled faintly. "I've heard that Mr. Rocky doesn't socialize with outsiders, but it seems that Rocky's wife is indeed the most special one." I smiled brightly. Rocky's fingers lightly brushed the base of my palm, sending tingles through me. After sending her off, Rocky took my luggage, holding my hand tightly as he strode forward. "Home." I gazed at his back, momentarily lost in thought. I couldn't believe that one day I would hold Rocky's hand so tightly. Upon returning home, with the sound of the door closing, I was suddenly pressed against the wall with force. His hand cradled the back of my head, our faces just inches apart. Rocky stared at me intently, his breathing growing rapid. My throat felt dry, and my heart raced. "Your breath is very sweet." His Adam's apple bobbed as he leaned closer. He approached with intensity, kissing me until my mind went blank. In a daze, I heard him whisper in my ear, "Can I carry you into the house?" I had already lost all strength, melting into his embrace. "Okay." After breaking through this layer of tension, Rocky seemed like a different person. He became unusually clingy, wanting to be close to me all the time. His demeanor was softer, almost childlike, in front of me. I couldn't help but wonder, if that night hadn't been with me, would he treat someone else the same way if he crossed that line? I didn't dare to think further. "I'm heading to the office. Want to come with me?" Rocky lifted me off the sofa and gently kissed my left cheek. But suddenly, I lost interest and felt a tightness in my chest. "You go ahead." "I won't go." I pushed him away and buried my face in the pillow. He didn't notice my change in mood and draped a blanket over me. "All right, you've been tired these days. Rest well while I'm gone." With that, he left. As soon as he walked out, I heard a noise from his study. In the past, I would never have entered his study, but now, perhaps I had that right. Rocky's study was simple and clean, with only a stack of documents and a computer on the desk. The sound was coming from the computer. I walked over, and the screen lit up. Just as I was about to close it, I noticed a prominent folder titled Beloved. It required a password to open. I instinctively typed in my birthday. It opened. Inside the folder were many subfolders, each titled with dates. I clicked on the earliest one and was shocked to find photos from a racing competition I participated in during my senior year. There I was, standing on the winner's podium, holding up the trophy, and to my surprise, Rocky was standing not far behind me, looking in my direction. My heart raced wildly. So, before I even knew him, he had already been watching me. Every encounter we had, he had documented. From our first meeting to our marriage, he had preserved every moment perfectly. Even without words, I could feel the love he had for me. "Rocky, I misjudged you." Suddenly, Rocky's mother summoned me back to their home. She had been abroad for years, and even after marrying Rocky, I had only seen her on video during the wedding. I felt unusually nervous. When I met her, my palms started sweating uncontrollably. She sat elegantly across from me, a kind smile on her face. Her hands were adorned with exquisite white gloves, and she instinctively avoided touching anything offered by the maid. "Haley, have some tea." Her gentle voice immediately calmed my nerves. I smiled and handed her the prepared gift. She furrowed her brow, paused, and gestured for me to place the gift on the table. "Sorry, Haley, please don't take it personally. I'm not used to touching things with others, so." She gave me an apologetic look. Her awkwardness was unexpectedly endearing. I shook my head, indicating that I understood completely. After all, Rocky was the same way. It turned out he inherited this from his mother. "I came today to ask for your opinion. Rocky and I are both not good with people, so you must have suffered a lot during this time, right? It's hard for people like us to accept someone wholeheartedly. If Rocky is to accept you, it may take time. I think this is unfair to you, so if you're willing, I can help you both get a divorce and provide you with some compensation." She spoke sincerely, not to break us apart, but genuinely thinking of my happiness. Just as I was about to speak, Rocky's voice came from behind me, tinged with displeasure. "Mom." His mother looked up, and the moment she saw Rocky holding me close, her eyes widened in disbelief. "You too?" "Yes, I love her," Rocky said, gazing deeply into my eyes. I was at a loss for words. "That's great. Now I won't have to worry." His mother suddenly clapped her hands, a smile of relief on her face. "Thank you, Haley. If it weren't for you, I would worry he'd be single forever." Rocky gently pinched my cheek, his face full of affection. "Yes, I'm so lucky. Not just him. Meeting him was my honor. Rocky, I love you too. I love you so much." The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.